In this episode, we're going to take the pressure off by turning studying into something that feels more like a routine you can live with than a mountain you have to climb. When you are brand new to cybersecurity controls, it is easy to believe you need a perfect plan, huge blocks of free time, and a magical level of motivation. You do not. What you need is a plan that fits the way memory actually works and fits the way your week actually goes. The idea here is simple. If you can reliably show up, recall what you learned, and keep your review rhythm steady, you will improve faster than someone who crams in random bursts. By the end, you should have a clear mental model for recall cycles, a practical review rhythm you can maintain with audio learning, and a calm exam day flow that keeps your brain available for the questions. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to our course companion books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at cyber.author.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. A study plan is not just a calendar with topics written on it. A real plan tells you what you will do, how often you will do it, and how you will know it is working. For a beginner, the biggest mistake is confusing time spent with progress made. You can listen to hours of content and still struggle on questions if your brain never practices pulling the ideas back out on demand. That is where recall cycles come in. A recall cycle is the repeating pattern of learn, attempt to remember, check yourself, then revisit later. When you treat recall as the center of the plan, studying stops being passive exposure and starts becoming training. To make recall cycles feel less abstract, picture learning as putting books onto shelves in a dark room. Listening to an explanation is like carrying a book into the room, but recall is like walking back in later with the lights off and trying to find the right book by touch. The exam is the lights off moment, because no one will narrate the concept for you while you answer. If you only practice while the lights are on, you will feel confident during study and then feel surprised during the test. Recall cycles build the skill of finding the book again, not just recognizing it when someone points at it. The more often you practice retrieval, the more your brain learns what is important and where to store it. An audio-first approach is powerful because it makes learning portable, but it can trick you into thinking listening equals learning. To avoid that trap, your plan should include deliberate recall moments built into your listening routine. That might be pausing after a segment and trying to explain the concept back in your own words, out loud, as if you were teaching it to someone else. It might be asking yourself a simple question like, what is the purpose of this control concept? What evidence would show it is working? Or what common misunderstanding would cause someone to choose the wrong answer? The key is that you are generating the idea, not just replaying it. If you can speak it clearly without the script in front of you, you are building the kind of memory the exam rewards. Now let's talk about the timing of recall cycles, because spacing matters. Beginners often do one long study session, feel good, and then wait days before revisiting the material. That feels efficient because it is tidy, but memory does not behave that way. Your brain forgets quickly at first, and then the forgetting slows down if you revisit at the right times. The sweet spot is reviewing just as you start to forget, because that effort strengthens the memory more than easy repetition does. In practice, that means you want short, frequent recall sessions rather than long, rare ones. Even 10 minutes of recall most days can do more than one exhausting weekend cram. A simple recall cycle you can actually follow is this. First exposure, short recall the same day, recall again the next day, then a few days later, then about a week later. You do not have to obsess over exact intervals, because life is not that precise, but you do want repetition with increasing gaps. Audio makes this easier because you can re-listen to a segment while commuting or walking, but the difference is you should re-listen with a purpose. Before you replay, try to state what you think the key points were. Then listen and compare. That comparison is where learning locks in, because your brain notices the gaps between what you thought you knew and what was actually said. Your review rhythm is the weekly pattern that keeps those recall cycles moving. Rhythm matters because it reduces decision fatigue. If you have to decide every day when and how to study, you will eventually skip because the decision feels heavy. A rhythm is lighter because the choice is already made. For audio-first learning, rhythm often looks like a daily short session plus one longer weekly session. The daily part is for recall and small reinforcement. The weekly part is for consolidating and checking whether you are connecting ideas across topics. When you keep the rhythm steady, you are building durable knowledge without needing heroic motivation. The daily session should be small enough that you can do it even on a rough day. If your plan depends on perfect energy, it will fail. Think of it as a minimum viable session, a short listen and an even shorter recall. You might listen to a section while doing something routine, then stop and summarize the main idea in 4 or 5 sentences. The important part is that the summary is yours, not the narrator's words repeated back. If you cannot summarize, that is not a failure, it is a signal. It tells you what to revisit tomorrow. Over time, these small sessions create momentum, and momentum is more valuable than intensity. The weekly session is where you strengthen links between concepts, because exams rarely test topics in isolation. A controls-oriented exam tends to ask you to recognize relationships, how governance supports implementation, how evidence supports assurance, how inventory supports control coverage, and how exceptions can weaken a program if they are not managed. During your weekly session, revisit multiple topics and ask yourself how they connect. Try to explain a concept using a different angle than last time. If you previously explained a control as a goal, now explain it as a measurement problem, or as an ownership problem, or as a risk reduction story. Variation forces deeper understanding, and deeper understanding holds up under tricky wording. Another piece of rhythm is using mixed review rather than always going in order. Beginners love order because it feels organized, but the exam will not politely follow the order you studied in. Mixed review means you intentionally practice switching topics, which trains your brain to select the right concept for the right question. In an audio-first plan, this could mean replaying short segments from different parts of your material and then doing a quick compare and contrast. What is similar about these two ideas, and what is different? How would you recognize each one in a scenario? This helps prevent a common exam mistake where you know two ideas separately, but confuse them when choices look similar. Now let's address the emotional part of studying, because it impacts consistency. When you start seeing concepts you do not fully understand yet, it is easy to feel behind. The truth is that confusion is part of learning, and a good plan uses confusion as fuel. The moment you realize you cannot recall something is the moment you have discovered what to practice next. That is a win, not a loss, because it makes your next session targeted. Your plan should include room for that. If every session is packed with new content, you never have time to repair weak spots. A sustainable plan alternates between adding new material and reinforcing old material. A practical way to track weak spots without turning studying into paperwork is to keep a short-running list of concepts you could not explain smoothly. You do not need a detailed notebook to benefit from this. You can keep it as a simple set of reminders in your head or in a quick note. The goal is to avoid the illusion that you are progressing just because you are moving forward in the material. Real progress is when yesterday's shaky concept becomes today's easy explanation. When you can feel that shift, your confidence becomes grounded. That kind of confidence shows up on exam day because you are not relying on luck. Let's shift to exam day flow, because your study plan should prepare for the day itself, not just the weeks before it. Exam day flow is the sequence of actions and mental habits that keep you steady. It starts with sleep and food and a calm setup, but the part you can train is your thinking pattern. You want a default way to approach every question. Read the task, identify what concept is being tested, notice key constraints, eliminate wrong answers, then choose the best remaining option. If you practice that pattern during study, it becomes automatic. Automatic processes free up attention, which you will need for the hard questions that demand careful reading. Your plan should include timed practice moments that mirror exam conditions, not to scare you, but to calibrate your pacing and attention. Timed practice is like a rehearsal, and rehearsals reveal problems early. You might discover you rush when anxious, or you freeze on unfamiliar wording, or you spend too long trying to be perfectly certain. Once you know your pattern, you can correct it. If you tend to rush, train yourself to slow down on the first read and to look for qualifiers like best, most, primary, or except. If you tend to freeze, train yourself to eliminate clearly wrong answers first so you feel progress even when unsure. It also helps to practice a simple recovery routine for when you hit a tough question. The goal is not to solve every hard question immediately. The goal is to avoid wasting your time and energy. A recovery routine might look like this. Restate the question in plain words. Identify which concept family it belongs to. Then pick the two most plausible answers and compare them against the goal of the control or the logic of governance. If you still cannot decide, make your best choice and move on, or flag it for later if that option exists. The reason this matters is that a single tough question can trigger a stress spiral that lowers performance on the next 5 questions. Your plan should protect you from that spiral. Finally, build your plan around the idea that passing is about consistent competence, not a perfect memory. Your audio-first approach gives you repetition, and repetition gives you familiarity, but your recall cycles turn familiarity into usable knowledge. Your review rhythm keeps you from drifting, and your exam day flow keeps stress from stealing points. If you follow a sustainable pattern of frequent recall, spaced review, mixed practice, and occasional timed rehearsal, you will steadily move from recognizing terms to explaining them, and from explaining them to applying them under pressure. That is the real transformation a good study plan creates, and it is how you walk into the exam feeling prepared instead of hoping the questions match what you happen to remember.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit BareMetalCyber.com.